Just before we get into today's video, I have something super important to let y'all know about. Every single penny that I make in the month of October will be given away to women impacted by breast cancer. Breast Cancer Awareness Month is right now. If you guys are feeling special, all you have to do to support this is share the content, like the videos, and make sure you do your part on that end. If you guys are feeling extra special, I'll throw the link down below where I will be donating. You guys can also just donate wherever you see fit. Outside of that, enjoy today's video. I'm super excited to share with y'all Paris, France, Kieran, Bankroll Challenge this year. It's a blast. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Close to Broke, everyone. My name is Kieran, and today we have another episode of the Bankroll Challenge from Europe or something. Why, hello there, and welcome to Paris, France. We are on the way to pick up our car from, dude, people complain about the rate in this place, but let me tell you guys, the parking rate is insane here. $75 to park overnight, and then you almost get murdered by bikes. We are going to the first casino that we'll be going to here. I think it's called Club something. From what I'm hearing, they're very strict about filming here. I hope that I can be discreet, undercover, brought a hat with me. They just don't know who the hell I am. Let's get into some action. We'll either be playing 1-2 or 2-4 or 5-5, whatever I can get on the name first, or in the game for first. See you guys there. Alright, we're gonna have to enter incognito mode presumably for the rest of this session. So if they catch me, obviously you'll see that I won't be filming any longer on the whole card cam, but let's keep the energy positive, assume no one knows who the hell I am, which is more than likely the case, and worry about the consequences later. Until then, we've got some poker to play. Let's go. So we've officially run into the first fail of the day. Walk in, give my passport, about to play, and Mr. Security Guard notifies me that I cannot come in with the shoes that I'm wearing. So the options are to find other shoes. The only problem is it's 8 o'clock, so like nowhere is open here. All the shops close at this time. So now I'm running to the Adidas store to hopefully get shoes that qualify a little better. Okay, the shoes have been acquired, but in retaliation, I will not be tying my shoes. Not like they care, but, you know, make me feel a little bit proud, like I wasn't absolutely destroyed by some Frenchmen. These are also the ugliest shoes I can find at the Adidas store. Will not be going with me back home. After a little bit of a hiccup getting inside, we finally arrive into what actually is a fairly beautiful club. But after waiting over 2 hours, we finally get our seat at the 5-5 table. We're opening things off with $1,000 in my stack, and this first hand of note, it's a fun one. I'm under the gun and I look down at pocket nines. I go ahead and make it $20 to go. The small blind calls, and then the big blind decides to 3-bet to 150. A little bit scary for sure, but all things considered, my hand's too good to ever fold. Although this is a big sizing, I'm gonna make the call. We're going heads up to a flop here, sitting on about 650 behind from the effective stack, which is our opponent, and the flop comes out king 10-8 with 2 diamonds. When the opponent checks to me, I find this a little bit precarious. There's a small chance my opponent could be trapping, but with the board this connected, I would assume that traps don't make a whole lot of sense. All that to be said, I have third pair, so I go ahead and check it back. We're going off to a turn card that comes out the ace of hearts. I get a live tell here on the turn. My opponent is definitely giving off some weak vibes, some indecision, and although that doesn't leave me with a whole lot, as I can still be losing to opponents' hands that contain bluffs, or semi-bluffs, or even random cards that don't know what to do, like pocket jacks or pocket queens. They don't know how to approach this turn card. I do have a plan to possibly take it away from my opponent on the river. So I go ahead and throw out a little float call here. We're going off to a river card that comes out the 3 of diamonds. I don't love it as it now brings in the front door flush. So if he happened to be bluffing with the flush draw, he does get there, but once again, I don't think it really affects anything in his specific hand here. So when after my opponent thinks about it for a little bit, he decides to throw out $340 bet, leaving himself around 200 behind. Well, at this point, he's obviously left me in a tough situation where I don't think I ever can go all in and get him to fold it better. So he's definitely taken the move away from me. After floating there on the turn, I kind of lit some money on fire there, but I suppose it is what it is. I end up making the fold, and my opponent windmills Jack 9 offsuit in my face. That is a very interesting hand. Well played to you, sir. Absolutely old me. Okay, looking to bounce back after getting bluffed in the last hand. And in this next hand, early position makes it $30 to go, or euros I should say. Middle position calls, and then I'm in late position with the ace-jack offsuit. Well, it seems like my opponent has definitely inspired me in this next hand because I want to go down the bluffing route myself. Let's crank up the variance. I decided 3-bet to €150. Early position, Razor Hollywoods, Hims and Haws, and even lets out a sigh and a grunt before raising to 400. Well, I don't know a euro that is bluffing for the old 4-bet sizing here of 400. Jokes aside, this is an older gentleman who's definitely, you know, wearing his heart on his sleeve, I should say, and definitely, at the very least, needs to be considered for an Academy Award. After this Hollywood, I've seen this one too many times. I will not be messing around, even though our opponent didn't make it that big. I go ahead and make the fold here, and our opponent taps the table and shows pocket aces, to which no one is surprised. Well, if at first you don't succeed, they always tell you you must try and try again. This next hand proves that to be true when I'm in middle position and I look down at the old suited King Jack. I love this hand for many different reasons, more importantly because it is one half of pocket Hurons. Nonetheless, suited Broadway, good enough to raise. I make it €20 to go. Late position, a solid thinking player, 3-bets to 70. The action back over to me. We can go a couple ways with it. A hand as good as this probably plays best as just a call here. Realizing our equity, we can still be ahead of a ton of our opponent's hands. I'm in Europe. I'm here to get very frisky. I decide to go ahead and 4-bet. I make it a little bit of a larger sizing of €250 to go. We started the hand with about 13 or 1400 effective. That's what I topped up to after losing a couple of hands. Our opponent thinks about it for a second before deciding on calling. We're going off to a flop here, hoping to hit a miracle, and a miracle is definitely what is coming. 8-3-4 with 2 spades and a club. We flop ourselves 2 overs and a flush draw to boot. When our opponent looks me over for a second, I decide a c-bet is in order, and a small one at that. I make it €140 to go. Our opponent obliges with a call, and the turn card is a miracle 7 of spades. I go for gusto. I go all in here for €1,110, putting my opponent in an awful predicament. The goal here is to get him to call off with his overpairs, which is obviously what he has at this point. Our opponent goes deep into the tank for several minutes. I do my very best to not move. He's asking me questions, looking to get some type of read off of me, and I'm doing my very best Tom Dwan impersonation. My mouth is subtly open. My eyes are fixed on the 7 of spades that is peeled off on the turn. I'm doing my best to give away nothing. And it seems like that is for the better. My opponent eventually tosses in the call. I show him my hand immediately, and he lets me know that he is drawing dead. By a massive miracle, we were down nearly €1,000 at one point. And just like that, we are up over €1,000. Let's go. Our stack is sitting fairly healthy, somewhere in the neighborhood of €3,000. I'm going to be totally honest with y'all. I've waited over 2.5 hours for a seat, and to be quite frank, we're not getting a lot of playable hands. So in this next spot, when I look down at the old King 4 suited, to be quite honest, this is definitely good enough for me to continue. We've had almost nothing to play with, and I'm getting fairly bored. I make it $20 or €20, and the button player who's new to the game 3-bets to €60. Although he is new to the game, he has been playing nearly every single hand. I wouldn't expect him to be a bad player, but let me tell you, he is definitely not going to give up on a pot easy and super aggressive. When the action folds back to me, I feel like all of those things constitute for a very interesting hand. So I go ahead and make the call, and we're going off to a flop here that comes out 10-6-5 rainbow. Not a great flop for my specific hand, but with a couple of backdoor draws and what I'd assume to be a better board for myself than him, I decided to throw out the old donk lead. I make it 70 euro to go. He raises to 170 euro. Action back over to me. I think this is a spot where floating is a little bit sketch, but why the hell not? When in Rome, or Paris for that matter. The turn card peels off the best card I'm ever going to have. It comes off the 3 of clubs, bringing a backdoor flush draw for myself, as well as an open-ended straight draw. With the action back on me to start with, I feel like betting here makes some sense. Irrelevant when our opponent decides to raise to 500. An absolute min click. It is almost impossible for this to happen in a 3-bet pot where an idiot like myself donk leads twice, and then an action player like we have here to raise twice. An unbelievable hand. Things are completely off the rails here, but with as much equity as I do have, continuing is literally mandatory. You can kind of make a sense sometimes for raising here again, but to be quite honest, feels like a good spot to just call, so I go ahead and do just that. We're going off to a river card that is a brick. It comes off a 10 of diamonds. Doesn't change a whole lot here. We can sometimes bluff, I guess. This is probably one of the worst hands I'll ever have on the river. But to be quite honest, I'm not in the business of bluffing off, especially on river board pairing cards. So I just check and give up, and my opponent seems to do the same. He checks back. Well, he'll probably be doing this with all his overpairs. So after a little bit of silence, I announce king high, to which he shows 10-9 of hearts. That is one of the most perplexing hands I've ever played in my life, and by far one of the most weird checkbacks on the river after check raising or I guess raising a donk lead. That was just, what the hell just happened? I am still gathering myself after that last hand. I cannot recall once on the history of this vlog ever donk leading in a 3-bet pot twice and getting raised twice. Oof, well, I've caught my breath. We've got some more hands to go over, and this next one's another fun one against the same opponent. Early position limps. I'm in the cutoff, and I look down at ace 10 of diamonds. I make it 30 euro to go. The small blind, who's that player from the last 10, calls. The big blind calls, and the limper calls as well. Once again, going too many ways to a flop, multi-way, that doesn't help us very much. With the action checked over to me in position on an 8 high board where, yeah, not a whole lot going for me. Not in the business of bluffing it off, so I just check it back. Realizing equity is what I'm pretty good at. The turn card comes out the 10 of hearts, improving us to top pair, top kicker, although it does bring in that front door flush. A little worrisome when the limper decides to start a bet of 50 euro, but with the action over to me, I feel like raising here makes some sense. We can definitely get value from worse and drawing hands, and more importantly, we can obviously get away from our hand if we get any more raises here on the turn. The small blind action player decides to raise to 240. Yeah, a little sketchy here, especially now limper decides to fold and the action's back over to me. I think this is a clear-cut spot for us to just get away from our hand. We raise with the intention to fold to any more aggression, but in real time, I'm only emotional, I'm only a human. The river card comes out the deuce of diamonds, an absolute brick. I almost wish a heart came on the river so I could have made that hero fold even easier, but once again that small blind player leads out on the river for 330. A fairly good sizing from his part. It's gonna get me to be fairly curious here. I don't know what my opponent can have outside of a flush. I don't even know what bluffs my opponent can have. I don't love it, and I honestly will say I hate it, but I flick in the call here because I'm just very curious. My opponent shows 9 deuce of hearts. I mean, cold calling with that hand in the worst position in poker, you just got to give him props. Got the max value, and there's only one donk in this hand. And let me tell you, it wasn't him. It was me. Let's see if we can't finally get the better of our opponent. In this next hand, once again, we have an early position limp. Next act isolates to 35. I'm on the button and I look down at pocket threes. Our night is winding down. We need to make a set. We haven't had one to this point. So I flick in the call, which invites the small blind, the big blind, and the limper to come along as well. Once again, another 5-way flop here that comes out ace 4-7. Once again, 2 spades here on the flop. Another flop flush draw. With the action check to me in position. Once again, not going to be blasting off here. I don't know what to expect at this point. I check it, and I'm happy I do when the turn card comes out, the 3 of clubs. Once again, the action is checked over to me and myself. I'm not in the business of slow playing, boys. I've got to make this pot go up very quickly. I decide to bet 150 euro. Once again, there's 2 flush draws out there, so many straight draws out there. I've got to get some money in the middle. The small blind decides to make the call. Finally, we got him right where we want him. Everyone else folds, heads up to a river that is the 8 of spades. I hate it. Another really rough river where the front door flush draw comes in, but our opponent checks. Our opponent has not shown the propensity of slow playing hands, so when he checks this river, I feel fairly comfortable now to go for some value. Maybe you can call it thin, whatever the case may be. I think betting somewhere in the neighborhood of the small 200s, 220 maybe, makes the most sense. But when I bet this big, I'm just not going to get looked up by single pair holdings all that often. And my opponent tanks for quite some time, but unfortunately does decide to do the right thing and fold. That will be bringing our session to an end. We did play for like 4 hours and we just couldn't get too many hands for the vlog, but the hands that we did get were absolutely a ruckus. Some of the most craziest hands I've ever played in my life happen in this vlog. Definitely some of the craziest stuff I've seen in 5-5. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. We've got a lot to talk about in the post-session interview, so let's get over to me now after the session.
It is now the following day, and to be quite honest, I was nearly falling asleep at the table. My time has been changing drastically as we've been traveling quite a bit here in Europe. That coupled with the fact that we've never really probably been acclimated with the time zone, it's catching up to me. We ended up booking a small loss, or actually, I guess a decent loss, but all things considered, it could have went a lot worse. We played about as bad as we're ever gonna play, and then sprinkling what I think to be a little bit of run bad. I think it could have been worse. We were into the game for 2,000 euro and out of the game for just shy of 1,400 euros, so like a 600 euro loss. Not excited about it. I mean, let's not pretend like that isn't a loss. But in the context of everything, I guess it could have been much worse. We're still in Paris and in Europe for a couple more days, looking to get one more session in here before I leave. Outside of that, not a whole lot more to talk about. Thank you guys so much for watching these videos. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Share them with a friend if you haven't already. And until the next time, it's close to broke. Stay happy, stay healthy. More importantly, run good to the tables, y'all. Deuces.
I can do this with my eyes closed.